Alice Rourke stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The planet Earth, her home, was now nothing more than a burned-out husk. Its surface was scorched, cities reduced to smoldering craters. The sky above, once a vibrant blue, now flickered with the cold, dark shadows of a dying world. It was hard to believe that mere hours ago it had been a thriving, living planet. Now, it was a graveyard. "Captain, the last of the escape pods have left the atmosphere," said Lieutenant Grayson, his voice trembling with the weight of the moment. He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. He didn't have to. They both knew what had just happened. Earth was gone, and humanity had been all but wiped out. Elise clenched her fists. There was no time to grieve, no time to mourn the billions of lives lost. The fleet had been shattered. The Vanguard was among the few survivors, and it would have to carry the last of humanity to safety. Or perhaps it would be their tomb. "Set course for the Solari Drift," she ordered, her voice sharp despite the burning ache in her chest. "It's the last place we'll be safe. We need to regroup, figure out what's left." Grayson nodded, his hands moving quickly over the controls. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Vanguard began to turn away from the remains of Earth. Illis's mind raced, not with fear, but with something colder, determination. There was still hope. There had to be. She thought of her family, her friends. They were all gone now. Nothing left but the embers of their civilization. The aliens who had destroyed Earth, who had wiped out her people, would soon learn just how wrong they were to underestimate humanity. The ships that had come for Earth were massive, technologically superior, and brutally efficient. They came without warning, their fleets entering Earth's orbit in the blink of an eye, launching a coordinated strike that obliterated the planet's defenses in a matter of hours. Hillis had watched helplessly as the enemy shattered humanity's military, one battle after another. Then, as the final blow came, her own ship had been forced to flee, leaving the planet to burn. But the aliens had made a grave mistake. Humanity would not just survive this, it would make them pay. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long, and now they would see what humans were capable of. Elise's gaze hardened as she stared at the stars ahead. "You won't get away with this," she muttered under her breath. "We'll rebuild, and when we do, we'll come for you." Grayson glanced over at her, sensing the fire in her words. "What are we going to do next, Captain?" Elise exhaled slowly. "We find the others. We fight. We survive. And we make them regret ever thinking they could wipe us out." The Solari Drift was a place where even the most experienced navigators dared not venture. It was a graveyard of forgotten ships, a network of asteroids and debris left over from ancient wars. But to humans like Elise Rourke and her ragtag fleet, it was the only sanctuary. The Vanguard and its fleet of surviving vessels drifted silently among the asteroid fields. The engines were powered down to a whisper, and every light on the ship was dimmed, casting long shadows down empty halls. The crew had settled into a rhythm of careful survival, knowing that at any moment, the enemy might find them. "Scan for hostiles," Elise ordered from the command deck. Her voice was calm, though her mind raced with thoughts of what they could do next. Their numbers were small, their resources limited, but the resolve among the survivors was unshakable. They had survived the impossible, and now they would fight to rebuild. Lieutenant Grayson, still working at his post, nodded grimly. "No sign of the enemy so far, Captain. But we can't stay here forever. They'll eventually scour this sector." "I know," Elise replied, her gaze hardening. "But for now, this is the safest place we have. We'll use the time to gather our forces, get in touch with the others. If there are any survivors left, we'll find them." For the next several days, the Vanguard and its small fleet operated in silence, moving cautiously between asteroids and hidden moon bases, staying off the radar of any alien patrols. The survivors, tired but determined, began repairing what little equipment they had. The engineers worked day and night, scrounging together anything they could to make their ships operational again. They had lost so much, but they still had their ingenuity, their resourcefulness. Elise spent long hours in the ship's command center, scanning distress signals and encrypted communications, hoping for any sign of life. And then, one morning, a faint signal came through. "Captain, we've got something," said Dr. Malik Chen, the ship's lead scientist, who had been working alongside the engineers to sift through alien communications. "It's coming from the core systems, a human distress beacon. But it's old, very old." Elise stood up, heart racing. Could it be a trap? "No way to tell," Chen said. "But it's the first sign of life we've found in weeks." Elise glanced at Grayson, who was already on his feet, ready for action. "Prepare a shuttle," she ordered. "We're going to investigate. This could be the break we need." A small team, including Elise, Grayson, and Chen, suited up for the mission. The shuttle was a stripped-down model, designed for stealth and speed. The team would approach the source of the signal cautiously, ready to engage at a moment's notice. As the shuttle left the Vanguard, it drifted toward the source of the beacon. The starfield stretched out before them, endless and indifferent. For the first time since Earth's fall, Elise allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe they weren't completely alone. Maybe they weren't as broken as they thought. "We're not done yet," she whispered to herself as the shuttle vanished into the blackness of space. The shuttle cut through the void, the black expanse of space, stretching endlessly in all directions. Elise Work sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the monitor in front of her. The distress beacon was growing stronger, pulling them deeper into the core systems. But something didn't feel right. It was too quiet, too easy. "Captain, we're approaching the source of the signal," Lieutenant Grayson said, his voice tight with focus. "The beacon's originating from a small moon orbiting a gas giant." Elise's instincts flared. "Anything on long-range scans?" Grayson paused, eyes flicking over the data. "Nothing unusual. No hostile ships detected. It's like we're walking into an abandoned ghost town." "We'll keep it that way," Elise replied, her tone cold and sharp. "No mistakes. We don't know who or what is waiting for us." The shuttle maneuvered cautiously into the moon's orbit, the only sound the low hum of the engines. It was a lifeless, barren world, its surface pockmarked with craters, a remnant of ancient cataclysmic impacts. Yet nestled within the moon's shadow, hidden within a jagged canyon, the source of the beacon became visible, a structure half buried in the rocky landscape. It was a derelict research facility, old and battered but unmistakably human in design. "This is it," Dr. Malik Chen said, his voice a mix of disbelief and excitement. "This structure, it's one of ours. Pre-collapse." Elise's brow furrowed. "Are we sure?" "Positive," Chen replied, pulling up the schematics on the display. This was a research facility built during the early years of humanity's expansion into deep space. It was abandoned after the first wave of alien invasions. I thought it was lost to history. "Then let's find out what happened to whoever was left here," Elise said, tightening her grip on the armrest. The shuttle landed softly on the moon's surface, the sound barely audible over the crackling comms. The team suited up and stepped out into the harsh, cold landscape, their boots crunching against the frozen ground. Elise led the way, weapon drawn, every sense alert. The air was thin, and the silence was suffocating. As they approached the facility, they could see signs of recent activity, footprints in the dust, scorch marks along the walls. It looked like someone had been here recently. But who? And why had they left the distress beacon running? Elise's hand hovered over her comms as she stepped into the facility's darkened corridors. "Grayson, stay alert. We don't know who or what is still here." "Understood," Grayson replied, his voice steady but cautious. They moved deeper into the building, passing rows of abandoned equipment and outdated machinery. Finally, they'd reached the central control room. The flickering lights gave the place an eerie, haunted feel. But it was the holographic console at the center of the room that caught their attention. The beacon's signal was coming from here, Someone had activated it deliberately. "Let's see who's been here," Elise said, approaching the console. As she activated the display, the system booted up slowly, flickering with static before coming to life. A series of old data logs flashed across the screen. It was a record of experiments, research on human adaptability, biological enhancements, and AI integration. But then something far more chilling appeared, a file labeled Project Ghost Fleet. Project Ghost Fleet, Chen murmured. "I've never heard of it." Elise's eyes scanned the file quickly. It was a military project, a secret effort to create a fleet of stealth ships capable of disappearing from enemy sensors, operating beyond the reach of conventional detection. The project had been abandoned after the first wave of alien attacks. But now, it seemed, it was their only chance. "Elise," Grayson's voice cut through her thoughts, his tone urgent. "We're not alone." From the shadows of the room, a figure stepped forward. A man, battered but alive. He wore the uniform of the old human defense fleet. His eyes were wild, desperate. "Please," the man gasped, his voice raw. "You're the first to find us. You have to help us before they come back." Elise's heart pounded as the man, pale and gaunt, staggered forward. The room felt colder despite the equipment's humming. He looked at them with wide, frightened eyes, as if he had seen something far worse than death. "Who are you?" Elise demanded, her voice firm. She knew the questions they had to ask, but the first was always the most important. What happened here? The man swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of a console for support. I'm Lieutenant Darren Holt, formerly of the Terran Fleet. We were part of the Ghost Fleet project." He took a shaky breath. "I don't know how long I've been here. It feels like an eternity." Elise nodded, signaling Grayson to approach cautiously. "How did you survive? What happened to the others?" Holt's eyes darted around the room, like he was afraid something would jump out of the shadows. "I didn't survive. At least, not in the way you think." He looked at her, eyes wide with a hint of fear, but also a strange mix of resentment. "We were part of a program to create the perfect stealth fleet. Ships that could disappear, go undetected, infiltrate, and take down the enemy from within." He paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "But the real project, the one they didn't tell anyone about, it wasn't about making a fleet at all. It was about erasing us." Elise felt a chill run down her spine. "Erasing you?" Holt nodded slowly. "When the alien empires wiped out Earth, they weren't just trying to destroy humanity. They knew humanity was different. You adapt too quickly. They couldn't risk allowing us to grow any further. The Ghost Fleet wasn't just a set of stealth ships. It was designed to be a trap. The ships, the technology, everything about it was meant to fail. The project was a cover-up to lure us in. They knew we would fight back, and they were ready for us to destroy ourselves." The room seemed to close in on Elise. So this entire project was a setup. Holt swallowed hard. "Yes, they wanted to see what you could do, how far you'd go before you broke. And when you did, they would sweep in and finish you off, once and for all." His voice cracked, and he looked away. "But there's more. Something worse." He hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen them. The alien fleets didn't just come to destroy Earth. They came for something else, something we couldn't understand at first. They were searching for human genetic material, for specific human traits." He met her gaze. "Your people weren't just dangerous because of your innovation. You were dangerous because of your biology. You're adaptable. Too adaptable. And they can't allow that." Elise absorbed the information, every word digging into her mind like a hammer. "How can you be sure?" Holt's eyes seemed to darken with the weight of his answer. "Because they've been experimenting with our DNA. With human genes, they were trying to replicate it, manipulate it, twist it into something they could control. They didn't just wipe us out. They wanted to make us into something else. Something theirs." Elise's fists clenched. The rage burned hotter now. It wasn't enough that they had tried to wipe humanity from the galaxy. They had used their most dangerous weapon, humanity itself. The aliens had underestimated the resilience of her species. They had failed to account for the fact that humanity wouldn't just survive, it would fight back. Grayson leaned in, voice low. "Captain, what do we do now?" Elise turned to him, eyes filled with fury and resolve. "We make them regret ever thinking they could control us. We bring the fight to them. It's time to awaken the Ghost Fleet." She paused, locking eyes with Holt. "Where are the ships?" Holt's face tightened. "They're not far. But you won't be able to find them easily. The stealth tech is still active. It will take time, and it will be dangerous." "Then we have no choice," Elise said, voice steady with purpose. "We're going to find them. And we'll use every ship, every piece of technology, every advantage we can get. Humanity's fight isn't over. It's just beginning." The Ghost Fleet wasn't just a fleet of ships. It was humanity's last hope. The secrets hidden within that abandoned research facility had uncovered a weapon far more powerful than any physical arsenal, an ancient, forgotten fleet of stealth vessels, capable of slipping undetected through the vastness of space. But now, Elise Work and her team had to move quickly. They didn't have the luxury of time. The Vanguard and its fleet of survivors had already begun their journey to find the Ghost Fleet, using every scrap of intel they could gather from Holt's fragmented memories. Each ship was a ghost in its own right, silent, undetectable, capable of striking without warning. "We have to move faster," Elise said, pacing the command deck. "The longer we stay here, the greater the chance the Triumvirate will find us." Lieutenant Grayson stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the star maps on the console. "The first ship is located in the Valori Nebula. It's a small, low-density area, ideal for hiding, but it's also filled with danger. Asteroid fields, radiation storms. We'll have to navigate carefully." "Prepare the fleet," Elise ordered. "We leave in 2 hours." She turned, her eyes cold as steel. The decision was made. There would be no turning back. As the hours passed, the survivors of humanity began to come together, shedding their old lives and embracing the cause. Engineers worked tirelessly to restore the old ships, scavenging what they could from the ruins of other vessels and repurposing them into new weapons of war. The once fragmented remnants of the human fleet were now united under a single banner, bound by their shared mission of survival and vengeance. "We've got something, Captain." Dr. Malik Chin's voice crackled over the comms. Elisa's heart skipped a beat. "We've detected an anomalous signal coming from the Valori Nebula. It matches the Ghost Fleet's signature." Elisa's face hardened. "This is it. We're not just finding a ship. We're finding a future." Within minutes, the fleet was in motion, its engines humming as they began the journey to the nebula. The stars above were cold and distant, but there was a fire burning within each ship, a fire that couldn't be extinguished. They were no longer just survivors. They were the spark of rebellion. "Captain," Grayson said, his voice laced with apprehension, "we're entering the nebula. The radiation levels are rising. It's going to get rough." "Stay sharp," Elise replied, her gaze unwavering. "The Triumvirate may be blind to us for now, but the moment we engage, they'll know we're here. And when that happens, we fight." The ships plunged deeper into the nebula, the swirling clouds of gas and dust obscuring everything but their immediate surroundings. Every sensor aboard the fleet blinked erratically as they navigated through the chaos. Elisa's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't let it show. She had been through worse, and now, her crew had something the enemy couldn't predict: unity. Suddenly, the fleet's long-range scanners flickered to life. There, emerging from the darkness, was the first ship of the Ghost Fleet. It was a sleek, angular vessel, almost invisible against the nebula's backdrop. A true ghost in the void, its hull designed to absorb the light around it, rendering it nearly undetectable. "This is it," Elise breathed. "We've found it." But their discovery came at a cost. The ship's sensors began to blare warnings as a fleet of enemy warships dropped out of warp, their imposing silhouettes cutting through the nebulous haze. The triumvirate had found them. Elisa's jaw tightened. All hands, prepare for battle. We fight, or we die trying. The fleet of survivors rallied, weapons coming online, shields raised. The first battle of humanity's war for revenge had begun. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for the chance to take back the galaxy. And this time, the triumvirate would know fear. The triumvirate warships cut through the nebula like predators in search of their prey. Their massive forms loomed in the distance, dark silhouettes against the swirling, colorful clouds of gas and radiation. The moment their presence was detected, a wave of panic washed over the fleet. But Elisa's work stood firm, her resolve unshakable. All ships, hold formation, she commanded, her voice steady despite the mounting tension. We'll fight. We've waited too long for this moment. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Grayson quickly began issuing commands. Weapons online. Shield systems activated. Captain, the enemy fleet is preparing to charge. We need to move fast, or they'll swarm us. Elisa's gaze never wavered from the view screen. Engage the ghost fleet. Let's show them the power of humanity. The fleet responded immediately, moving as one, each ship now a shadow among the stars, nearly invisible against the nebula. The newly discovered ghost fleet was humanity's greatest advantage. Its stealth systems made it virtually undetectable to the enemy. But the triumvirate was no ordinary foe. They had developed their own methods of detecting invisible ships. Triumvirate ships are targeting us with electromagnetic pulses, Grayson called out. They're trying to disable our systems. Counteract the pulses, Elise ordered. We'll rely on sheer firepower. Take them down before they get the chance to react. The first volley of energy blasts erupted from the Vanguard's hidden weapons array, striking the lead triumvirate vessel with a brutal force. The ship's shields flared, but they held. The enemy returned fire, the beams of energy crackling through the nebula's mist and slamming into the Vanguard's shields. The ship rocked, but its shields held strong, absorbing the impact. This is just the beginning, Elise muttered, her fingers gripping the command chair. We need to hit them harder. The battle was chaotic, the nebula a swirling storm of energy and wreckage. The triumvirate ships fired relentlessly, their weapons powerful enough to tear apart any human vessel they encountered. But the ghost fleet was elusive. The ships struck from the shadows, appearing like ghosts, unloading devastating strikes on the triumvirate warships before vanishing once more into the mist. Enemy shields weakening, Grayson shouted. The ghost fleet's tactics are working. We've got them on the defensive. Elisa's heart surged with the adrenaline of battle. The triumvirate hadn't anticipated such a fight. They had thought the human race was beaten, broken. They were wrong. The humans of the Vanguard were more than survivors. They were warriors, and they were ready to take back the galaxy. Prepare for the final push, Elise ordered. All ships, focus fire on the lead triumvirate vessel. Let's end this. As the fleet moved in unison, another barrage of weapons fire erupted from the Vanguard. The lead triumvirate ship's shields faltered under the onslaught, and then, with a final, resounding explosion, it broke apart, pieces scattering into the void. We've taken down their flagship, Grayson called out, his voice full of disbelief. We've actually done it. But their victory was short-lived. The remaining triumvirate ships regrouped, their remaining forces now charging with greater fury. The battle wasn't over, and humanity hadn't won yet. The triumvirate would retaliate with everything they had. But Elisa's expression hardened, her eyes filled with resolve. We've only just begun. They wanted to wipe us out. Now we'll make them regret it. The Vanguard and the Ghost Fleet continued to press the attack, refusing to retreat. Humanity had tasted victory, and they would not stop until the triumvirate was crushed beneath their boot. The war for the galaxy had officially begun. The first strike had been delivered, and now there was no turning back. The battle had raged for hours, The once calm nebula now a graveyard of smoldering wreckage and shattered ships. The Triumvirate's retaliatory strike had been fierce, but the Ghost Fleet's unpredictable tactics, combined with the raw tenacity of humanity's fleet, had proven more than a match for the alien invaders. The destruction of their flagship was a blow to their pride. But the Triumvirate was far from defeated. "Captain, we've inflicted heavy damage, but the Triumvirate is regrouping," Grayson said, his voice strained but steady. He was at the helm of the Vanguard, eyes flicking between the tactical displays. "They've called in reinforcements from a nearby star system." Elise Work leaned over the command console, eyes narrowing as she took in the data. The Triumvirate ships that had fled the nebula were now returning in greater numbers, more coordinated than before. The victory they had achieved was just the first wave. There was no time to rest. "We're not going to wait for them to surround us," Elise said, her voice cold and commanding. "We strike first." She turned to the crew. "All ships, prepare for a coordinated attack on the Triumvirate reinforcements. We won't give them time to regroup. Focus on the smaller craft. We've taken down their flagship, but we need to disrupt their remaining command structure." On the view screen, the Triumvirate's reinforcements emerged from hyperspace, their ships cutting through the darkness like sharp metallic blades. Their numbers had swelled, but humanity's fleet had learned the art of warfare in the most brutal way possible. They had learned to fight dirty, to use the terrain, to strike without warning. "Captain," Dr. Malik Chen's voice came through the comms, "I've identified a weak spot in the enemy fleet. They've clustered their forces around a central command ship. If we can destroy it, their coordination will break down. They'll fall into chaos." Elise's gaze hardened. "Target that ship. Full firepower." The fleet moved as one, every ship in perfect sync, as they dove into the heart of the enemy formation. The Triumvirate retaliated, their weapons discharging with precision, but humanity was relentless. The Ghost Fleet, hidden in the darkness, struck first, taking out smaller support ships with deadly precision. The Vanguard led the charge, flanked by other stealth ships, launching missiles and plasma charges at the central command vessel. The explosion was deafening, a shockwave rippling through space as the Triumvirate's command ship was obliterated in a blaze of fiery destruction. The remaining Triumvirate ships faltered, their once perfect coordination collapsing as their commanders were taken out in the blast. "Direct hit," Grayson shouted, a rare hint of exhilaration in his voice. "Their fleet is in disarray." Elise didn't flinch. The battle wasn't over yet. "Keep the pressure on them. We finish what we started." As the Triumvirate forces broke apart, humanity's fleet moved like a swarm of bees, striking with brutal efficiency, picking off the enemy vessels one by one. For the first time in years, the balance of power seemed to shift in humanity's favor. The alien invaders, who had once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, were now on the defensive. But Elise knew this was just one battle. The war was far from over, and the Triumvirate would never give up easily. They were ruthless, and they would come back stronger. "Captain, we've secured the battlefield," Grayson reported, his tone cautious but hopeful. "The Triumvirate is retreating. For now." Elise exhaled, her mind already turning to the next step. "We've won this fight, but the war is just beginning. We need to take advantage of this momentum. Contact every fleet, every base, every outpost we can. We'll unite the galaxy under one banner." She looked at the shattered remnants of the enemy fleet, her eyes burning with the fire of determination. "We will make them regret ever underestimating us. Humanity is not done. We're just getting started." The war for the galaxy was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity had found its strength, its purpose. And with that, there was no power in the universe that could break their resolve. The Triumvirate was reeling, their forces shattered, but they were not defeated. Yet, for the first time in their long reign over the galaxy, they were no longer the predators. Humanity had become the hunters, and the Triumvirate was on the run. Elise stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her gaze fixed on the star maps spread across the screen. The galaxy, once dominated by alien overlords, was now a battleground. The Triumvirate's retreat wasn't just a sign of their weakness, it was the beginning of humanity's rise. The ghosts of the past were being exorcised, and in their place, humanity would take its rightful place among the stars. "Captain, the fleet has completed its final sweep of the outer territories," Grayson reported. "We've secured the borders, and the remaining triumvirate ships are falling back. The resistance has been decimated." Elise nodded, her mind already shifting to the future. "What's the status of the colonies? Are they ready? Every outpost, every remaining fleet, every rebel group. They're all ready. We've united the galaxy's survivors under one cause, taking back what was stolen." Elise's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the final maps of their warpath. The Triumvirate's retreating forces were no longer a coordinated army. They were scattered, leaderless, and demoralized. The next phase of the campaign would be their final push, a direct assault on the Triumvirate's capital. "We've come a long way," she said quietly, "but we still have one final battle to fight." The Vanguard slipped into hyperspace, its engines roaring as the fleet followed. The final stage of humanity's war had begun. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming their place in the galaxy. The Triumvirate's reign of terror would be over. Hours later, the fleet arrived at the heart of the Triumvirate Empire, a distant star system, shrouded in the remnants of an ancient civilization. Elise looked out across the vast expanse, her pulse quickening as the moment of reckoning approached. "All ships in position," Grayson reported, his voice filled with anticipation. "We've calculated the optimal strike window. We hit now, and we hit hard." The command ship, a colossal fortress of metal and alien technology, stood at the center of the Triumvirate's stronghold. It was a symbol of their dominance, their arrogance, but that arrogance would be their downfall. "Prepare the weapons," Elise commanded, her voice steady and resolute. "This ends today." The Vanguard and the rest of the fleet emerged from hyperspace, weapons primed and ready. The Triumvirate's defenses were formidable, but humanity had something they didn't: unity, resolve, and the sheer will to see their enemies fall. "All ships, fire at will," Elise ordered. A barrage of energy blasts rained down on the Triumvirate command ship, sending shockwaves through the enemy's defenses. The once mighty vessel flared as its shields buckled under the assault. The Triumvirate had underestimated humanity's ingenuity, their resilience, and their capacity for destruction. Every ship, every crew member, fought as one. Explosions tore through the heart of the Triumvirate's stronghold. Their once pristine ships crumbled under the onslaught, their commanders scrambling for any means of defense. It was too late. The Triumvirate's empire was collapsing. The final blow came when the Vanguard unleashed its full firepower. The alien command ship shuddered, its shields completely obliterated, and then it exploded in a blinding flash, the shockwave rippling outward as the Triumvirate's last bastion fell. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of breathing and the hum of the ships. The fleet stood victorious, the galaxy forever changed. Elise stood, staring at the aftermath of the battle. Her crew, her people, had fought tooth and nail to reach this moment. They had risen from the ashes of their former selves, and now they were more than just survivors. They were conquerors. They had reclaimed the stars. "We did it," Grayson said quietly. Elise turned to face him, a rare, solemn smile crossing her face. "No, we rebuilt." She stepped toward the view screen, watching as the final remnants of the Triumvirate forces scattered into the void. The galaxy was free, and humanity had claimed its place as its rightful rulers. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new era, one forged in the fires of war, unity, and the indomitable will of humanity. They had fought to survive, and now they would shape the future of the galaxy. The dawn of the new era had arrived.